Hi there, I'm Don Marshall72, known as the obscure Lord of the Rings facts guy in many places across the internet. If you're watching or listening to this, it means that you have started a journey to read or listen to J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion with my commentary and explanation throughout. If you're starting to read this series, then you've started down an incredible journey, where we'll explore J.R.R. Tolkien's book, The Silmarillion, the prequel to both the Lord of the Rings trilogy as well as The Hobbit. It tells everything about Middle-earth from the dawn of time all the way to the end of the Third Age. It also means that you're watching a re-upload, and I want to explain why you're watching a re-upload with an added introduction. First, I want to explain myself. The first episode of Silmarillion Sunday is not great. Back when I started this, I was reading to a grand total of about 5 people, on a computer that was made in 2012, on a microphone that was very, very bad. However, over the weeks and months, the support of all of you has made it possible where I could buy a microphone and a better webcam and hire an artist to make this amazing background behind me. And I just wanted to say thank you. I never expected any of this to happen, and I am so grateful. I also do want to prepare you. The first few episodes are not up to the quality that I want. And there are constant interruptions. As you just heard, I've got a dog, and I stream this in the middle of my living room where she sits next to me. Unfortunately, there are real-world interruptions that happened on these streams. I have tried to clean it up as much as I possibly can, but please note there will be points when you need to skip ahead. I hope that's okay. Once again, thank you for all of the support. J.R.R. Tolkien's books mean the world to me, and I am so blessed that I am able to read, explain, and hang out with all of you in a way that I never thought was really possible. Thank you all so much. I hope you enjoy Silmarillion Sunday. Hello, everybody! The countdown has ended. We are at a very special edition of Silmarillion Sunday on Wednesday. So for those that missed the last Silmarillion Sunday, the video didn't record properly, and I felt terrible about that because part of me very much wants to make this a series where we read the Silmarillion and I stop and explain it and I focus on, the important aspects of it. So I'm going to do it again from the same part that we started the first time. So I will start with the Ainulindale, and I will be rereading it. If you've already seen this, you don't have to stay. It's okay. If you want to stay and chat with everyone, thank you. Also, thank you to everyone. I'm going to pause for a second on Twitch. Thank you to everyone on TikTok who has followed me on Twitch over here. It's very kind of you, and I appreciate all the love and support. So for those that have never been here for a Silmarillion Sunday, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read from my copy of the Silmarillion, and every time we get to a confusing part or something that I think needs to be explained a little bit more, I will go into a little bit more detail. In essence, let me explain. For those wondering, my reading order for any of this is I recommend you read The Hobbit, then the Lord of the Rings trilogy, then the Silmarillion. If the Silmarillion doesn't make sense, go find an online resource wiki that you like, but don't read the Silmarillion first. I'm going to get started. It's going to be a great time. Oh, you know what? I think hang on. I think I'm glitching out a little bit on... Oh, it says error. Hang on. It's 6:05 Eastern Time. Here's your Lord of the Rings reading of the Silmarillion. Chapter 1 is the Ainulindale. There was Eru, the One, who in Arda is called Iluvatar. He made the first the Ainur, the holy ones that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before aught else.
and he spoke to them, propounding to them themes of music. And they sang before him, and he was glad. But for a long while they sang only each other, or but few together, while the rest hearkened, or listened. Yet even as they listened, they came to deeper understanding and increased in unison and harmony. So that's the first 3 sentences of the Silmarillion. Basically, the god of Tolkien's universe, Eru, created the lesser gods called the Ainur, and they create the physical world through music, and we'll explain that later on. And it came to pass that Iluvatar called together all of the Ainur and declared to them a mighty theme meaning music, unfolding to them things greater and more wonderful than he had yet revealed, and the glory of its beginning and the splendor of its end amazed the Ainur, so that they bowed before Iluvatar and were silent. Then Iluvatar said to them, "Of the themes that I have declared to you, I will now that ye make in harmony together a great music." And G is capitalized in this, and M is capitalized in this. So G in great and M in music. So it becomes a proper noun in the English language, meaning that it is an important music. "And since I have kindled you with the flame imperishable, ye shall show forth your powers in adorning this theme, each with his own thoughts and devices, if he will. But I will sit and hearken, and be glad that through you great beauty will awaken in song." A brief note about gender. The Ainur are referred to as he, but some of the Ainur become female later on. The Ainur are about as non-binary as you get in Tolkien's universe. But they don't identify as non-binary. It's a female or a male later on. I'll explain that in a bit. "Then the voices of the Ainur, like unto harps and lutes, and pipes and trumpets, and viols and organs, and like unto countless choirs singing the words, began to fashion the theme of Iluvatar to a great music. And a sound arose of endless interchanging melodies woven in harmony that passed beyond hearing into the depths and into the heights, and the places of dwelling of Iluvatar were filled with overflowing. And the music and the echo of the music went out into the void, and it was not void." Void is capitalized here, and I want to make mention of that because the void itself is a place. Think of it like space, but in an ethereal part. "Never since have the Ainur made any music like to this music, though it has been said that a greater still shall be made before Iluvatar by the choirs of the Ainur and the children of Iluvatar." So the children of Iluvatar are elves and men, both together. "Then the themes of Iluvatar shall be played aright, and take being in the movement of their utterance. For all shall understand fully his intent in their part, and each shall know the comprehension of each, and Iluvatar shall give their thought the secret fire, being well pleased." That's partly where people stop, because it's a very confusing sentence. So what they are saying is that at the end of time, Eru is going to let everyone know what the purpose of what the meaning of life is. Until then, though, the goal is to focus on what is and what could be. "But now Iluvatar sat and hearkened, and for a great while it seemed good to him, for in the music there were no flaws. But as the theme progressed, it came into the heart of Melkor to interweave matters of his own imagining that were not in accord with the theme of Iluvatar, for he sought to increase therein the power and glory of the part assigned to himself." Melkor is the main antagonist of the Silmarillion. He is Sauron's master, and he is not a good person, or not a good spirit. I should say. To Melkor among the Ainur had been given the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, so he was the most powerful. And he had a share in all the gifts of his brethren. He had gone alone into the void places, seeking the imperishable flame, for desire grew hot with him to bring into being things of his own. So what that is saying is that Melkor wanted to make life his own. He wanted to create life like that. Being things of his own, and it seemed to him that Iluvatar took no thought for the void, and he was impatient of its emptiness, yet he found not the fire, for it is with Iluvatar. But being alone, he had begun to conceive thoughts of his own, unlike those of his brethren. Some of these thoughts he now wove into his music, and straightway discord arose about him, and many that sang nigh to him grew despondent, and their thoughts were disturbed, and their music faltered. But some began to attune their music to him, rather than the thought which they had at first. Then the discord of Melkor spread ever wider, and the melodies which had been heard before floundered in a sea of turbulent sound. But Iluvatar sat and hearkened, until it seemed that about his throne there was a raging storm, as of dark waters that made war one upon another in the endless wrath that would not be assuaged. So to put that in layman's terms, Melkor, much like Satan in Christianity, wanted his own, and his own way to create life. And he can't. So he got angry and started messing up the theme. Also, for those just joining us on Twitch, this is a reread of the first part of the Silmarillion. The first part, unfortunately, didn't record, so I'm re-recording it. Apologies about the lack of video. Unfortunately, I'm having some bad internet problems today. Also, for those on TikTok, feel free to jump over on Twitch. The sound quality is a little bit better. The link is in my bio. Let's keep it going. Then Iluvatar arose, and the Ainur perceived that he smiled. And he lifted up his left hand, and a new theme began amidst the storm, like and yet unlike the former theme. And it gathered power and had new beauty. But the discord of Melkor arose in uproar and contended with it, and again there was a war of sound, more violent than before, until many of the Ainur were dismayed and sang no longer, and Melkor had the mastery. Then again Iluvatar arose, and the Ainur perceived that his countenance was stern. So Iluvatar is angry. And he lifted up his right hand, and behold, a third theme grew amid the confusion, and it was unlike the others, for it seemed at first soft and sweet, a mere rippling of gentle sounds in delicate melodies. But it could not be quenched, and it took to itself power and profundity, and it seemed at last that there were two musics progressing at one time before the seat of Iluvatar, and they were utterly in variance. The one was deep and wide and beautiful, but slow and blended with immeasurable sorrow, from which its beauty chiefly came. The other had now achieved a unity of its own, but it was loud and vain and endlessly repeated. And it had little harmony, but rather a clamorous unison, as of many trumpets braying upon a few notes. And it essayed to drown the other music by the violence of its voice, but it seemed that its most triumphant notes were taken by the others and woven into its own solemn pattern. In amidst the strife, whereat the halls of Iluvatar shook, and the tremor rang out into the silence, yet unmoved, Iluvatar arose a third time, and his face was terrible to behold. Then he raised up both hands, and in one chord, deeper than the abyss, higher than the firmament, piercing as the light of the eye of Iluvatar, the music ceased. I'll pause there for a brief second. If anyone has any questions on Twitch, feel free to ask them. This is more or less when I can explain a few things. This is what we do on normal Silmarillion Sundays. I answer questions that anyone has. So what you just heard is the creation story of Tolkien's universe. The god Eru has just created beings called the Ainur, which are more or less like lesser gods. The lesser gods sing music together and create a beautiful harmony. And in doing so, they're going to create something far greater than themselves. And I'll explain that a little bit later in the next portion, but it is one of the best parts. But it is tough to read. I think the reason that people put the Silmarillion down eventually is that it's not easy to follow. So in doing so, I hope that I can explain all of this and answer any questions that you might have about it. Feel free to leave them in the comments section below during the live. As questions come in, I will read them out loud so the people who are listening to this later on can read them. Didn't Melkor's actions had to happen as part of... Okay, so didn't Melkor's action have to happen as part of the song? That is part of it, yes. If you believe that Iluvatar has a plan, that Melkor was supposed to do this, and this is all part of a greater plan of Iluvatar, yes. You're new here and you don't have a specific question, you just want to thank you. Thank you, Zich. I appreciate the love. Thank you. I'm going to keep going if that's okay. I will address comments further as they come in later on. Feel free to leave them in the comment section below. When we last left off, the music had ceased. Then Iluvatar spoke, and he said, "Mighty are the Ainur, and mightiest among them is Melkor," who was the guy that was starting his own thing later on. "But that he may know, and all the Ainur, that I am Iluvatar. Those things that ye have sung, I will show them forth, that ye may see what ye have done, and thou, Melkor, shalt see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me." So you're absolutely right. Sabbath of Fire asked a great question, saying, didn't Melkor's action have to happen as part of the song? He answers it, yes. Everything that Melkor does, or that anything that happens, is through Iluvatar. It's a lot like God in Christianity in that way. "And thou, Melkor, shall see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me, nor can any alter the music in my despite. For he that attempteth this shall prove but mine instrument in the devising of things more wonderful, which he himself hath not imagined." Then the Ainur were afraid, and they did not yet comprehend the words that were said to them, and Melkor was filled with shame, but which came secret anger. But Iluvatar arose in splendor, and he went forth from the fair regions that he had made for the Ainur, and the Ainur followed him. But when they came into the void, again with a capital V, Iluvatar said to them, "Behold your music," and he showed to them a vision. And keep in mind, this is just a vision. This is not what actually happens. This is what may be. Giving to them sight where before there was only hearing. And they saw a new void made visible before them, and it was globed amid the void. And it was sustained therein, but was not of it. And as they looked and wondered, this world began to unfold its history, and it seemed to them that this world lived and grew. And when the Ainur gazed for a while and were silent, Iluvatar said again, "Behold your music. This is your minstrelsy, and each of you shall find contained herein amid the designs that I have set forth before you, all those things which it may seem that he himself has devised or added. And thou, Melkor, wilt discover all of the secrets, thoughts of thy mind, and wilt perceive that they are but a part of the whole and a tributary to its glory." So what happens here is Eru, the god of Tolkien's universe, is saying, hey, that music you just made, I made it so that because of that music you created something. And a spoiler alert, what they had created is the planet Earth, is Middle Earth, is the physical world, the tiny bits of stardust, the stars themselves, the planets, the Earth, all of Middle Earth. That's what they created. Here we go. And many other things Iluvatar spoke to the Ainur at that time, and because of their memory of his words and the knowledge that each has of the music that he himself made, the Ainur know much of what is, what was, and what is to come. And few things are unseen by them. Yet some things there are that they cannot see, neither alone nor taking counsel together. For to none but himself has Iluvatar revealed all that he has in store. So God is not revealing his world. For to none but himself had Iluvatar revealed all that he had in store, and in every age there comes forth things that are new and that have no foretelling. For they do not proceed from the past, and so it was that as the vision of the world was played before them, the Ainur saw that contained things which they had not thought. And they saw in amazement the coming of the children of Iluvatar, which are elves and men. And the habitation that was prepared for them, meaning the children of Iluvatar, the elves and men, the literal creation of the world. And they perceived that they themselves in the labor of their music had been busy with the preparation of its dwelling, and yet knew not that it had any purpose beyond its own beauty. For the children of Iluvatar were conceived by him alone, him meaning God, Eru, Iluvatar. And they came with the third theme, and they were not in the theme which Iluvatar propounded at the beginning, and none of the Ainur had part in their making. Therefore they had beheld them, and the more did they love them. Iluvatar propounded at the beginning, and none of the Ainur had a part of their making. Therefore when they beheld them, when the Ainur beheld the children of Iluvatar, when the lesser gods saw the elves and the men, they loved them. Beings, things other than themselves, strange and free, wherein they saw the mind of Iluvatar reflected anew, and learned yet a little more of his wisdom, which otherwise had been hidden even from the Ainur. Now the children of Iluvatar are elves and men, the firstborn and the followers. The firstborn are the elves, the followers are the men. When I say men, I mean men and women, by the way. Men is capital M, meaning both men and women, and non-binary. Amid all the splendors of the world, its vast halls and space, and its wheeling fires, Iluvatar chose a place for their habitation in the deeps of time and in the midst of the innumerable stars. For those listening, D in deeps and T in time are capitalized, so the deeps of time becomes a proper noun. It is a physical place. It is a physical time of being. And this habitation might seem a little thing to those who consider only the majesty of the Ainur, but not their terrible sharpness. As who should take the whole field of Arda for the foundation of the pillar, and so raise it until the cone of its summits were more bitter than a needle. This is again where Tolkien gets lost. Tolkien's language sometimes falls into the archaic sense of things. And truly, if you are confused and you want to read the Silmarillion, gloss over that part. There are parts of Tolkien's universe that even I don't understand, and I've read this book probably 20 times. It's part of the world. The deeps of time are a physical place and a place in time. And this habitation might seem a little thing to those who consider only the majesty of the Ainur and not their terrible sharpness, as who should take the fields of Arda for their foundation of a pillar, and so raise it until the cone of its summit were more bitter than a needle, or who consider only the immeasurable vastness of the world, which still the Ainur are shaping, and not the minute precision on which they shape all things therein. But when the Ainur had beheld the habitation in the vision, and had seen the children of Iluvatar arise therein, so when the lesser gods had seen the elves and men come into the world, then many of those most mighty among them bent all of their thought and their desire towards that place, and of these Melkor was the chief, even as he was in the beginning the greatest of the Ainur who took part in the music, and he feigned, even to himself at first, that he desired to go thither means there, to go to there, to that place, that he desired to go thither and to order all things for the good of the children of Iluvatar, controlling the turmoils of the heat and the cold that had come to pass through him, but he desired rather to subdue to his will both elves and men, envying the gifts with which Iluvatar promised to endow them. And he wished himself to have subjects and servants, and to be called Lord, and to be the master over other wills. I got a comment the last time I read this that said something along the lines of, well, didn't Melkor just want free will? Didn't he just want to choose for himself and to create for himself? Partially. Melkor wanted to create, but he wanted to create so that he could control, not so that the things he created could have free will. He created all of this so that he could dominate, and it is his will of domination, and in his will of domination, he became a slaver rather than a god. Melkor is kind of like the Lucifer in this part. I'll take questions, by the way, if anybody wants to ask any in the comments section below. If anyone wants to mention anything in the comments, feel free to ask questions about parts you're confused about. I'll read them out loud. Sabbath actually asks another question. So Melkor seems like Lucifer in the Bible. Very much so. Tolkien drew a lot of his inspiration from the Silmarillion from the Bible. Also, for those listening on TikTok, I will answer your questions as well. Feel free. Feel free to ask them as well. All right, I am going to keep going. I don't see any further comments. If any comments come up, I will address them. Oh, here we go. Was the War of Wrath the war that banished Melkor? So that is part of it. That is coming up much later in the Silmarillion. The War of Wrath is about a 500 years long war, which is the main focus of the Silmarillion. Also, for those on TikTok, feel free to follow me on Twitch. The audio quality is a little bit better. All right, here we go. We're going to keep going. We've only got another 2.5 pages left, so let's keep this going. But the other Ainur looked upon the habitation set within the vast spaces of the world, which the elves called Arda, the earth. Arda, Arda, the physical earth. And their hearts rejoiced in light, and their eyes, beholding many colors, were filled with gladness. But because of the roaring seas, they felt a great unquiet. And they observed the winds and the air and the matters of which Arda was made, of iron and stone and silver and gold and many substances. But of all these, water they most greatly praised. And it is said by the Eldar that in water there lives yet the echo of the music of the Ainur. So the Ainur are seeing the physical part of the world. And many of the children of Iluvatar hearken still, unsated, to the voice of the sea, and yet know not for what they listen. Now the waters had that Ainu, whom the elves called Ulmo, turned his thought, and of all most deeply he was instructed by Iluvatar in the music. We are introduced to specifically one of the Ainur. His name is Ulmo. He will come up a lot in the Silmarillion. He is one that closely resembles Poseidon in Greek mythology. But of the airs and wind, Manwe most had pondered, who is the noblest of the Ainur. So Manwe is another of the Ainur. He is going to come up quite a lot, as well as his wife, Varda. Of the fabric of earth, Aule had thought. Aule is another of the Valar that come up and become one of the bigger players in the Silmarillion. To Iluvatar had given skills and knowledge scarce less than that of Melkor. So Aule and Melkor are basically almost equal in power. Melkor may be slightly more. Iluvatar had given skills and knowledge scarce less than to Melkor, but a delight and pride of Aule is the deed of making and in things made, and neither in possession nor in his own mastery, wherefore he gives and hoards not, and is free from care, passing ever on to some new work. I relate to Aule a lot, in that I move on from project to project very quickly. I'm never satisfied with how something turns out, and so I move on to the next project so I don't obsess over it. And I've heard a lot of people say something similar. Let's keep it going. And Iluvatar spoke to Ulmo and said, "Seest thou not how here in this little realm, in the deeps of time, Melkor hath made war upon thy province? He hath behaught him a bitter cold immoderate, and yet hath not destroyed the beauty of thy fountain, nor of thy clear pools. Behold the snow, and the cunning of frost. Melkor hath devised heat." So in doing so, Iluvatar is talking to Ulmo, one of the more powerful Valar. Hey, even though Melkor has basically become your opposite and is now against you, don't give up. You still have power over him, and there is strength in numbers. Behold rather the height and glory of the clouds and the ever-changing mist, and listen to the fall of the rain upon the earth, and in these clouds thou art drawn nearer to Manwe, thy friend whom thou lovest. Then Ulmo answered, "Truly, water is become now fairer than my heart imagined. Neither had my secret thoughts conceived of the snowflake, nor in all my music was conceived the falling of the rain. I will seek Manwe, that he and I may make melodies forever to thy delight. And Manwe and Ulmo have from the beginning been allied, and in all things have served most faithfully the purpose of Iluvatar." I'll take a small break there and take any questions. For those just joining me on TikTok, I am also streaming on Twitch. The audio for this is going to be available on Twitch. I may also make this into a podcast. This may be it. Legally speaking, I can't record the audiobook for any money. I can do it for free, but I don't know the best distribution site, so for now, I leave it to Twitch. Do the Valar have some form of free will? Yes, the Valar have free will in that they can act and choose their own actions. However, their actions are more or less made so that they can please Iluvatar, so that they can please God. Everything they do for Iluvatar, for the god of Tolkien's universe. Are there alternate names for Iluvatar? So Iluvatar is what the elves call the god of Tolkien's universe. He is also called Eru, E-R-U. And Eru means the one. All right. I will pause there. Apologies for those listening in sort of an ASMR sort of way. My dog is also in the same room with me, so you may hear her barking in the background. Have Gandalf and the other Istari been created yet? Not yet, but we are coming to that. We are coming to that. All right, let's keep it going. We are literally 3 pages away. But even as Ulmo spoke, and while the Ainur were gazing upon this vision, it was taken away and hidden from their sight. And it seemed to them that in that moment they perceived a new thing, darkness. And darkness has a capital D. For those listening, it is a capital D. Darkness becomes a thing. Darkness is a thing. It has physical form, it has physical power. Think of it like space. It's wonderful. They perceived a new thing, darkness, which they had not known before except in thought. But they had become enamored of the beauty of the vision and engrossed in the unfolding of the world which came there to being, and their minds were filled with it. For the history was incomplete, and the circles of time not full wrought, when the vision was taken away, and some have said that the vision ceased ere the fulfillment of the dominion of men and the fading of the firstborn. Wherefore, though the music is all over, the Valar have not seen, as with sight, the latter ages, or the ending of the world. Just to give a brief idea of what that means. When the Ainur, the lesser gods, saw this vision of their music, they saw it through space and time. They saw the beginning and the middle, but they did not see the end of the world. They do not know how the world ends. That only Iluvatar knows. Only Eru, the god, knows. Eru took the vision away before they could see the end. And I think that was on purpose, because if the Ainur knew the end, then there would be no worries. They already knew the ending, so why would they focus on the present? And I think that's an important part. Let's keep it going. Then there was unrest among the Ainur, but Iluvatar called to them and said, I know the desires of your mind, that what ye have seen should verily be, not only in your thought, but ever as yourselves are, and yet other. Therefore I say, Ea, and that is the letters E and A, with an accent over the A. Therefore I say, Ea, let these things be. And B has a capital B. And I will send forth into the void the flame imperishable, and it shall be at the heart of the world. For those that have seen the movies, the flame imperishable is sometimes what people believe to be what Gandalf says when he says he is a wielder of the flame of Ainur. The flame imperishable is the literal light of the world. Let's keep going. And those of you that may go down to it. And suddenly the Ainur saw afar off a light, as it were a cloud with the living heart of flame, and they knew that it was no vision only, but that Iluvatar had made a new thing, Ea, the world that is. Thus it came to pass that of the Ainur, some abode still with Iluvatar beyond the confines of the world, but others, and among them many of the greatest and most fair, took the leave of Iluvatar and descended into it, into Ea, into the physical world. But this condition Iluvatar made, or it is the necessity of their love, that their power should henceforth be contained and bounded in the world, to be within it forever until it is complete, so that they are its life and it is theirs. And therefore they are named the Valar, the powers of the world. But when the Valar entered into Ea, they were at first astounded and at a loss, for it was, if naught was yet made, which they had seen in the vision. So Earth is more or less a blank slate. For the great music had been but the growth and flowering of thought in the timeless halls, and the vision only a foreshadowing. But now they had entered in at the beginning of time, and the Valar perceived that the world had been but foreshadowed and forsung, and that they must achieve it, meaning that the Valar must work for it. Until in the deeps of time and in the midst of the vast halls of Ea, there came to be that the hour and the place where was made the habitation for the children of Iluvatar. And in this work the chief part was taken by Manwe and Aule and Ulmo, but Melkor too was there from the first, and he meddled in all that was done, turning it as if he might to his own desires and purpose, and he kindled great fires. When, therefore, earth was yet young and full of flame, Melkor coveted it, and he said to the Valar, "This shall be my own kingdom, and I name it unto myself." But Manwe was the brother of Melkor. Again, this is Manwe, the other of the Ainur, who plays a big role. Keep his name in mind, Manwe. But Manwe was the brother of Melkor in the mind of Iluvatar, and he was the chief instrument of the second theme that Iluvatar had raised up against the discord of Melkor, and he called unto himself many spirits, both greater and less, and they came down unto the fields of Arda, and they aided Manwe, lest Melkor should hinder the fulfillment of their labors forever, and earth should wither ere it flowered. And Manwe said unto Melkor, "This kingdom thou shalt not take for thine own wrongfully, for many others have labored here no less than thou." And there was strife between Melkor and the other Valar, and for that time Melkor withdrew and departed for other regions, and did there what he would. But he did not put the desire of the kingdom of Arda into his heart. Now the Valar took to themselves shape and hue, and because they were drawn into the world by love of the children of Iluvatar, for whom they hoped, they took shape after the manner which they had beheld in the vision of Iluvatar, save only in majesty and in splendor. So here, the Valar are taking elven form or human form. 2 legs, a head, 2 arms, a torso. They look more or less like the elves. Moreover, their shape comes of their knowledge of the visible world, rather than of the world itself. And they needed not, save only as we use raiment, and yet we may be naked and suffer no loss of our being. Therefore the Valar may walk, if they will, unclad, and then even the Eldar cannot perceive them, clearly perceive them, though they may be present. But when they desire to clothe themselves, the Valar take upon them forms, some as male and some as female. For that difference of temper, they had even from the beginning, and it is but bodied forth in the choice of each, not made by the choice, even as with male and female may be shown by the raiment, but is not made thereby. That is one of those parts where I know a lot of people lose it, because many people read that and they go, wait, are they male? Are they female? What is happening? I don't understand. These words are confusing. The Ainur do not have gender. In coming down to the world, the physical world, they more or less create a gender for themselves, but they can change that if they choose. Also, I apologize about the mic quality. My heater just turned on. So if you hear a little bit of background noise, that's why. Not a hairdryer, just my heat. And the Valar drew unto themselves many companions, some less, some well nigh as great as themselves. And they labored together in the ordering of the earth and the curbing of its tumults. Then Melkor saw what was done, and that the Valar walked the earth as powers visible, clad in the raiments of the world, and were lovely and glorious to see and blissful, and that the earth was becoming a garden for their delight. But its tumults were subdued, and his envy grew the greater within him, and he also took visible form. But because of his mood and the malice that burned in him, that form was dark and terrible. And he descended upon Arda in power and majesty, greater than any other of the Valar, as a mountain that wades in the sea, and has its head above the clouds, and is clad in ice, and crowned with smoke and fire. And the light of the eyes of Melkor was like a flame that withers with heat and pierces the deadly cold. Thus began the first battle of the Valar with Melkor for the dominion of Arda. And of those tumults the elves know but little. For what has here been declared is come from the Valar themselves. So the Valar are telling this story. With whom the Eldai spoke in the land of Valinor, and by whom they are instructed. But little would the Valar ever tell of the wars before the coming of the elves. Yet it is told among the Valar, Yet it is told among the Eldar, which is another name for elves, that the Valar endeavored ever, in spite of Melkor, to rule the earth and to prepare it for the coming of the firstborn, meaning the elves. And they built lands, and Melkor destroyed them. Valleys they delved, and Melkor raised them up. Mountains they carved, and Melkor threw them down. Seas they hollowed, and Melkor spilled them. And naught might have peace or come to lasting growth. As for surely as the Valar began a labor, so would Melkor undo it or corrupt it. And yet their labor was not all in vain. And though nowhere and in no work was their will and their purpose wholly fulfilled, and all things were in hue and shape other than the Valar first intended, slowly, nevertheless, the earth was fashioned and made firm, and thus was the habitation of the children of Iluvatar established at last in the deeps of time amidst the innumerable stars. that is where I'm going to stop for right now in my reading. I think that is where I am going to wrap up on my Twitch stream. I'll stop here. I will take a break on TikTok. I may come back. It looks like I may have lost my stream on my Twitch, or on my TikTok. I apologize if my internet went out. Thank you again for everyone joining me on this reread of Twitch. Thank you again. You've been wonderful. It's been a pleasure having you here. And I will see you all for Silmarillion Sunday, which is going to be Sunday at noon Eastern Time on my Twitch channel. Again, we will be reading part of the Quenta Silmarillion, which is the next part. Twitch, thank you for joining for our reread. We will be back on Sunday at noon Eastern Standard Time for Silmarillion Sunday and the Quenta Silmarillion. Goodbye.